In a quiet, misty town nestled between two sleeping hills, there lived an old lady named Eleanor Gray, known to everyone as Grandma Ellie. She was a small woman with silver white hair that looked like moonlight caught in motion and eyes so kind they could soften even the hardest of hearts. She lived alone in a crooked, ivy-covered cottage on the corner of Maple Street. And though she didn't have much money, she had something far rarer heart that never stopped giving. Every morning, she baked warm bread and left a loaf at the door of anyone who might need it. A sick mother, a lonely soldier, or a hungry child. And yet, no one truly knew where she got her money from. She never asked for payment. She never seemed to run out of flour. She never seemed to age. A few houses down lived Thomas Reed, a shoemaker by trade, a dreamer by heart. His shop, Reed & Sons, stood at the edge of town square, though there were no sons and never had been. The sign was faded, the leather cracked, and Thomas himself had grown bitter. Once, he was the best shoemaker in the valley. His boots lasted through storms. His slippers whispered on palace floors. But time had been unkind, and customers had moved on to cheaper factory-made shoes. Now he spent his days hunched over his workbench, muttering about how kindness doesn't pay bills and how good hearts don't keep shops open. He had one dream left: to make a pair of shoes so perfect that even the king himself would want them. But his hands trembled now. His eyesight was failing, and his hope was nearly gone. Until one foggy evening, someone knocked on his door. Thomas opened the door and found Grandma Ellie, drenched from the rain, holding a pair of ancient-looking shoes wrapped in silk cloth. "Thomas," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange echo, "I need your help. These shoes must be repaired before the first snow falls." Thomas frowned. They're barely holding together. The stitching's ancient. The soles are worn out completely. They belong in a museum, not in my shop. Ellie smiled faintly. "They're older than you think, my dear. But if you fix them, I'll pay you more than you've earned in years." Thomas's eyes lit up. "How much?" Ellie leaned closer. "Enough to save your shop." "Kai, but you must promise something." He hesitated. "What's the promise?" "Ka, that you must not wear them," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "No matter what happens, no matter how curious you feel. These shoes carry a story and a curse." Thomas chuckled. "A curse? I'm a shoemaker, not a fool." But the way her eyes glimmered like candlelight trapped in water made him uneasy. Still, money was money. And so, he agreed. That night, Thomas placed the strange shoes on his workbench. They were unlike any he'd seen before, stitched with golden thread that shimmered faintly, even in the dark. The leather was soft but cold, like skin that had never seen sunlight. He examined the inside and found something odd, a name, written in faded ink. "Eleanor G." He frowned. Her name? Why would she ask him to repair her own shoes? He tried to push the thought away and began his work. The moment his needle touched the golden thread, a faint sound echoed like a heartbeat. He froze. Then the candle flickered violently, and a shadow moved across the wall, though there was no one else in the room. Thomas laughed nervously. "Too much coffee, old man. Too much imagination." But the heartbeat continued steady, slow, alive by dawn. The shoes looked new again. Polished, perfect, gleaming like sunlight trapped in leather. Thomas felt proud. These might be the best I've ever made. He couldn't resist. He told himself he'd only try them on for a second, just to see how they fit. The moment his foot slid inside, a shock of warmth spread through him, then silence. Then, music. He blinked. He wasn't in his workshop anymore. He was standing in a ballroom, golden chandeliers glittering above, couples dancing around him in elegant circles. His hands were young again, strong, unscarred. He looked down. His apron was gone. replaced by a fine velvet suit. And in front of him stood a woman, Eleanor, but not old. She was radiant, her hair auburn and flowing, her eyes sparkling like emeralds. "Thomas," she whispered, "you came back." He reached for her, confused, but before he could speak, everything vanished. He found himself back in his workshop, panting, the shoes still on his feet. He tore them off and threw them across the room. What in heaven's name? The secret. Past the next day, a shoemaker by trade, middle-aged, sad-faced man, returned the shoes to Eleanor. "I finished them," he said, voice trembling slightly. "They're ready." She looked at him closely. "You wore them." Thomas froze. "What? How do you know?" Her face softened with sadness. "Because once you wear them, they remember you." He swallowed hard. "What are they?" Eleanor looked out the window where snowflakes had just begun to fall. "A long time ago," she began, "I was not the old lady you see. I was young and in love with a shoemaker kind, talented man named Thomas Reed." His heart stopped. "What?" She smiled faintly. "You, my dear, or rather, another version of you. Time has a way of looping back on souls meant to meet again." He stared at her, lost. "I don't understand. Neither did I when I first made those shoes," she said. "They were a gift for you, enchanted to keep us together beyond time. But when greed crept into your heart, you sold them to a traveler for gold. That act broke the spell and condemned us both to live lifetimes apart." She reached out and touched his trembling hand. "Every 100 years, I find you again, and every time, you forget. These shoes are the only thing that remember." Thomas couldn't speak. The world around him felt unreal. "So, what happens now?" he whispered. "The curse ends tonight," she said softly. "But only if you choose love over greed this time." She handed him a small pouch. Inside were gold coins, more than he could ever need. "For your shop," she said. "Take them and burn the shoes before midnight." Thomas nodded, but as he walked home, he kept glancing at the shoes in the box. Their golden glow seemed stronger than before, almost calling his name. He told himself he wouldn't wear them. Not again. Not after what he'd seen. But as the snow fell heavier and his shop's fire flickered low, temptation whispered once more. The final night, it was nearly midnight when he took the shoes out. They glimmered softly, almost breathing. He looked at the coins on his table enough to live comfortably. But what was comfort without purpose, without youth, without the woman he'd once loved? His hands shook. What if I could see her one last time, just once more? He put the shoes on. Light exploded through the room. He found himself once again in the ballroom. When Lady time, it was empty. Dust floated in the air, candles half melted, music silent. Then, from the far end, he saw her Eleanor, walking slowly toward him. Older now, but smiling. "You couldn't resist, could you?" she said gently. "I had to see you again," he whispered, "even if it costs me everything." She stepped closer and took his hands. "And that is why it ends tonight." The walls around them began to fade, turning into starlight. The floor beneath them dissolved into clouds. "Thomas," she said, "love is not about holding on, it's about letting go." He shook his head. "No, please stay. Stay this time," but she only smiled. "You finally remembered me. That's all I ever wanted." As her form began to dissolve into light, she whispered one last thing. "Every act of kindness plants a seed. When your time comes again, be the gardener, not the merchant." Then she was gone. The morning after, when the townspeople awoke, they found the shoemaker's shop door open, snow blowing inside. Inside, on the workbench, lay a pair of golden shoes, still glowing faintly, a note in shaky handwriting. "Forgive me, Eleanor. I finally understand that some things are not meant to be kept, only cherished. May kindness outlive us both." No one ever saw Thomas again. But every winter's first snow Footprints in golden dust appeared on Maple Street, leading from Eleanor's cottage to the Shoemaker's store, then fading into the mist. And every person who found those footprints felt a little warmer that night, a little kinder, without knowing why. Moral of the story: kindness is timeless. Greed turns love into loss. When you give without expecting, you live beyond your years. And sometimes, the souls we meet are not strangers. They're echoes of promises we made long ago.